Unlike the christenings of Queen Victoria's children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the christening of the future queen is an event about which far less is known. It was not the subject of a painting, nor was much written about it, as the ceremony itself was a strictly private one, by order of the Prince Regent. Much later, the many baptismal services which were performed within the Queen's family were recorded in a variety of art methods, from sketches to watercolours, to full-scale oil paintings and eventually, of course, photography. A key example of the latter being the photograph made at White Lodge of the Four Generations in 1894, with 3 successive British heirs-apparent, Queen Victoria holding in her arms the newly christened future King Edward VIII. It will be recalled that at the time of the marriage of the Duke and Duchess of Kent, which was performed in 1818 first at Coburg, and then in a second English double ceremony together with the Duke and future Duchess of Clarence, at Kew, it was still far from clear that any child born to the Duke and Duchess of Kent would directly become next in line, whatever the Duke's own private optimism on the subject. This led him to roundly declare, "My brothers are not so strong as I am, I have led a regular life. I shall outlive them all. The crown will come to me, and my children. Certainly, the Duke's vigorous health appeared to support this claim, something which would make his shocking death 8 months later all the more unexpected, but he was, of course, George II's 4th son. The Prince Regent, who became George IV the year after the future Queen Victoria's birth, in 1820, had only had one legitimate daughter by his wife, the disgraced Queen Caroline of Brunswick, and the Duke of Clarence stood ahead in the royal succession race. The call to sire a new, legitimate heir to the throne was taken up by the remaining bachelor sons of George III in response to the death of the Prince Regent's daughter, Princess Charlotte, so as to save the British succession. By the time of the birth of Princess Victoria of Kent, the Duchess of Clarence, the future Queen Adelaide, had already given birth to her first child, Princess Charlotte of Clarence, who was born whilst the couple were in Hanover, but died shortly afterwards. A stillborn child followed in September 1819. In contrast to the robust baby girl born on 24 May 1819 at Kensington Palace and referred to by her proud father, the Duke of Kent, as a model of strength and his pocket Herculeses. The Duke, for his part, proudly showed off the baby princess, saying that they should look at her well, for she will be Queen of England. Queen Adelaide's second daughter, Princess Elizabeth of Clarence, was born on 10 December 1820 and died a mere 3 months later. Heartbreakingly for the Duchess, stillborn twin boys followed in 1822, though to the Duchess's credit, she bravely wrote to the Duchess of Kent that, "My children are dead, but yours lives, and she is mine too." This serves to show that despite the conviction of the Duke of Kent, the christening of Princess Victoria of Kent was not immediately treated like that of the designated heir to the throne. Although time did gradually reveal her to be the obvious choice, something made ultimately clear to her at the age of 10, when a genealogical table was placed in front of her at Kensington Palace by her governess, Baroness Lesson, showing her own place in the succession, which yielded a tearful response, "I see I am nearer to the throne than I thought." The christening of the future Queen Victoria took place at Kensington Palace, precisely a month after her birth, a favoured royal residence until 1760. Not only was Kensington the palace of her birth and childhood, but her girlhood under what became known as the Kensington system devised by the Duchess of Kent's controller of the household, Sir John Conroy, meant that the palace was a place which did much to form the character of the future Queen Victoria. It would also be where she was famously woken up on 20 June 1837 to be informed of the death of her uncle, King William IV, earlier that morning, writing that consequently I am queen. The room chosen for the christening was the cupola room. Resplendently decorated by William Kent in George I's reign, overseeing the magnificent painting of the coffered dome in a fictive design, adding wooden pilasters and statues of Roman deities. Today, there is little to show that the future Queen Victoria was christened here, perhaps a correct reminder that this event numbers only one in any royal room's individual history, much in the way that Queen Victoria's 34 firstborn, the Princess Royal, was christened in Buckingham Palace's throne room in 1841 when the throne was removed and a temporary altar set up for the occasion. The silver gilt lily font which was made for the christening of the Princess Royal has been used on many occasions since. The future Queen Victoria, by contrast, was christened in a silver gilt font which had been commissioned by Charles II and first used in 1688 for the baptism of Prince James Francis Edward Stuart, history's old pretender. Interestingly for us, the Archbishop of Canterbury who officiated at the christening of the Princess Royal was William Howley, who had in fact been present at Queen Victoria's christening when Bishop of London. He was also present at Kensington Palace on the morning of 20 June 1837, when he informed the young Queen of her accession on the death of the King, together with Lord Conyngham, the Lord Chamberlain. The cupola room was hung with crimson velvet from the Chapel Royal for Princess Victoria's christening. What we do know about the christening, in fact, tells us far more about the power tensions then present within the warring royal family as opposed to the event itself. In fact, the ceremony was performed accurately enough beneath William Kent's glorious ceiling, which was itself the cause of an earlier architectural argument. This was caused by the matter of the commission of George I's cupola room, a decorative tussle between the Baroque architect James Thornhill and the newly fashionable William Kent. Kent won the day, and it was beneath his ceiling that the baby daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Kent was christened. The disagreement over names even continued on the day itself. The future Queen Victoria was christened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon by the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Charles Manners Sutton. Similar to the mishaps that would occur during the coronation ceremony of Queen Victoria, her christening was not without its complications. The Archbishop was unsure of the names chosen for the child, despite the fact that the Duke and Duchess of Kent had written to the Prince Regent about the names that would be selected for the baby princess. The Prince Regent replied the day before that Georgiana could not be chosen because there was the question of precedence given to which monarch's name would be first, the Russian Tsar Alexander I being another of the child's godparents, nor would the name Charlotte be a welcome choice because of his late daughter. As it happened, the Prince Regent uttered the name Alexandrina for the Tsar. Then, perhaps as an afterthought, but the name that would in fact come to define an age, give her the mother's name also then. Perhaps this was but a further example of the terse Georgian inheritance of tension between a future king and his possible heir, although in fact, later accounts would show that on his accession, George IV did somewhat warm to the child. The future Queen Victoria was therefore given the names Alexandrina Victoria, by which time the Duchess had burst into tears. Only one of the baby princess's godparents was present, the Prince Regent.The others, Tsar Alexander I of Russia, the Dowager Duchess of Coburg, her maternal grandmother, and her aunt, the widowed Queen Charlotte of Württemberg, were represented in proxy by the Duke of York and two of George II's other daughters, Princess Augusta and Princess Mary, Duchess of Gloucester. The latter was the last of George II's daughters and survived into the early age of photography. Surviving images in the royal photograph collection show a young Queen Victoria visiting her elderly aunt, with the Prince of Wales and her second daughter, Princess Alice, made by Antoine Claudette. The Duke of Gloucester also attended, as did the Duchess of York and Prince Leopold, later King of the Belgians and widower of the Prince Regent's daughter, Princess Charlotte. Poignantly, the Duke of Kent was present at the baptism of his baby daughter, a picture of paternal pride. The future Queen Victoria would never remember her father, who died in January 1820 at Sidmouth, when she was only 8 months old. Tantalizing glimpses survive of her attempt to achieve a kind of closeness with the father she had never known, including pictures of him which she acquired for the royal collection, and a painting in particular of him in Field Marshal's uniform that she purchased in 1839, the year prior to her marriage, and hung in her bedroom at Buckingham Palace. A charming account survives of how, 2 months after the christening of the baby Princess Victoria, he ordered the gardener at Kew to pick 3 bunches of flowers for the birthday of the Duchess at 6 o'clock in the morning. One should be given into the hands of our little baby to give to the Duchess, which of course must be so compassed as to have nothing to prick her hands. Some of the red and green ribbons survive, undoubtedly some of the earliest textiles to be preserved associated with Queen Victoria, and perhaps amongst those relics connected to her babyhood that she recorded finding and with her mother's effects in 1861. Whatever the baby Princess Victoria was christened in, it has not survived. The earliest known dress which has been preserved which is associated with Queen Victoria dates from around 1831-32 and is kept in the royal collection. So it must have been from when Princess Victoria was about 12 years old. Another miniature on ivory by Fisher showing the baby Princess Victoria in her cradle was supposedly made for the Duke of Kent's birthday on 2 November 1819. A preliminary sketch was made for this is now in the Royal Library, and another drawing by Fisher showing the Queen as a baby is in Schloss Arenberg, Coburg. Fisher himself claimed that he had painted the very first portrait of Her Majesty when in her cradle, RCIN 420266, due to the current argument over the choice of the christening names. It will be remembered that another christening had been the cause of a glowing Georgian royal disagreement over the choice of godparents of Prince George William, son of the future George II. No accounts survive that describe the baby Princess Victoria on the occasion of her baptism, as if the disagreement itself took center stage as opposed to the child. It is possible that an entry in the Duchess's household accounts for dressmaking for Princess Victoria in 1819 may cover the costs of christening clothes. The cupola room is the third room within the King's state apartments, between the Privy Chamber and the King's drawing room. Standing in it, it is easy to focus instead on the lush decoration of William Kent and forget that the future Queen Victoria's christening was performed there. The Queen returned to Kensington Palace in 1899, after which she would declare the palace open to the public. We know from her journal that she revisited those parts of the palace which were familiar or important to her, such as the room in which she held her first council and also the one in which she was born.